The Zarkak's observation vessel emerged from fold space with characteristic precision, its crystalline hull refracting the morning sunlight over Oklahoma's sprawling plains. Chief Observer Ixel adjusted their sensor arrays, preparing to document yet another primitive species study. After 15 such missions, these observations had become routine. Catalog the dominant species' survival behaviors, note their technological progress, and move on. Humanity, according to their preliminary data, seemed unremarkable. That was until the storms began. Anomalous atmospheric activity detected, Secondary Observer Venn reported, their telepathic resonance tinged with mild interest. Local meteorological conditions are producing multiple Class 4 vortex formations. Through their advanced imaging systems, they watched as massive funnel clouds descended from the darkened sky, their destructive power laying waste to everything in their path. But it wasn't the tornadoes that caught their attention. It was the small convoy of vehicles driving toward them. Analyzing behavior pattern, Ixel communicated, their confusion evident. Species members appear to be deliberately approaching the danger zone. Inside the lead vehicle, Dr. Jessica Miller kept her eyes fixed on the massive wedge tornado bearing down on the small town of Millbrook. Her storm-chasing team had been tracking this system for hours, and now they had minutes to warn the townspeople and gather crucial data that could save lives in future storms. "Dave, get those wind readings," she shouted into her radio. "Maria, deploy the probes. We need that data before this thing hits the populated areas." The Zarkaks observed in bewilderment as the humans scrambled to set up their equipment. Their vehicles, primitive by galactic standards, were modified with weather instruments and reinforced frames. The team worked with practiced efficiency, but what confused the aliens most was the evident excitement in their movements. These specimens appear to be experiencing positive emotional responses to proximity to danger, Venn noted. Previous species studies indicate this as contrary to optimal survival behavior. The situation grew more incomprehensible to the observers as the tornado approached the town. Instead of fleeing, more humans arrived. Pickup trucks and boats pulled up to flooding zones. Civilians emerged from their shelter spots once the tornado passed, not to salvage their own belongings, but to help complete strangers. Subject analysis. Male human, approximately 65 solar cycles, assisting unknown juvenile humans from collapsed structure, Ixel documented. No apparent genetic relationship, no obvious survival advantage gained. They watched as an elderly man, later identified as Frank Wheeler, used his personal watercraft to rescue 3 children trapped in their flooding home. When interviewed by local media, his response defied the Zarkaks' logical frameworks. "Why wouldn't I help?" Wheeler had said, shrugging off praise. "Those kids needed somebody, and I had a boat." Simple as that. Throughout the day, similar scenes repeated. A group of high school students formed a human chain to reach a stranded family. Local restaurant owners handed out free meals to rescue workers. A woman opened her undamaged home to 7 families she'd never met before. Revising initial species assessment, Ixel transmitted to the central archive. Human behavior patterns show significant deviation from expected survival protocols. Subjects consistently prioritize group survival over individual safety, even among non-kin groups. Most notably, they appear to derive satisfaction from engaging in high-risk altruistic behaviors. As night fell and emergency services finally reached the area, the Zarkaks continued their observation. They watched Dr. Miller's team compile and freely share their data with local weather services, potentially saving more lives in future storms. They observed the impromptu organization of shelter networks, the sharing of resources, and the immediate formation of recovery plans. Initial conclusion. Ixel recorded in their final notes for the day. Humans display fascinatingly irrational response to crisis. Further study required to understand how such seemingly inefficient behavioral patterns have not led to species extinction. Preliminary hypothesis. There may be survival advantages to their methods that our current models cannot quantify. Little did they know, This was only the beginning of their education in human resilience. Massive trauma incoming. Multiple casualties. Highway pileup. The radio crackled to life in Chicago's Northwestern Memorial Hospital emergency bay. Paramedic Mike Thompson yanked his boots on, despite having just finished what should have been his final call of a 36-hour shift. "Thompson, you're well past your hours," his supervisor called out. "Like hell, I'm leaving now," he shot back, already sprinting toward his rig. "Garcia's out sick, and Williams is still at that apartment fire." From their cloaked observation post, the Zarkacs continued their documentation. "Subject exhibits clear signs of physical exhaustion," Venn noted. "Mental acuity estimated at 47% of optimal, yet chooses to continue engaging in high-stress activities." The winter storm had turned Chicago's highways into ice rinks. A 20-car pileup had created a nightmare scenario. Trapped victims, freezing temperatures, and dangerous road conditions. As Mike's ambulance arrived on scene, the Zarkacs watched him jump out and immediately start triaging patients. "Hey there, buddy," Mike said to a terrified child trapped in a crushed minivan, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I'm Mike. What's your favorite superhero?" "Mine's Batman. No powers, just pure stubbornness." "Speaking of stubborn, I'm gonna get you out of there, okay?" "Fascinating," Ixel transmitted. Subject uses humor and social bonding in clearly unsuitable situations, yet it appears to have a calming effect on the injured juvenile. Across town, the aliens split their observation as they detected another anomalous behavior pattern. Amanda Harrison, a high school physics teacher, was converting her small apartment into an emergency shelter. Several of her students had been stranded when the buses stopped running. "Ms. Harrison, you really don't have to do this," one teenager said, watching her arrange sleeping bags in her living room. "Right, because I'm going to leave you all out in a blizzard." She rolled her eyes, pulling more blankets from her closet. "Now who's good at making hot chocolate? We might as well turn this into a physics study group since you're here." Subject shows no genetic relation to juveniles, then recorded. Resources already limited in dwelling. Actions decrease individual survival probability by 23%. Back at the accident scene, Mike was performing CPR on an elderly man, well past the point most would have called it. Sweat froze on his forehead as he continued compressions. "Come on, sir," he muttered between counts. "My shift ended 2 hours ago, and I'm missing the Bears game. Least you could do is make this worth my while." Biochemical analysis indicates subjects' physical reserves are nearly depleted, Ixel noted. Continuation serves no practical purpose. Then the man's heart started beating. The Zarkacs observed in silence as similar scenes played out across the city. A homeless man sharing his carefully hoarded blankets with strangers. A taxi driver refusing payment to shuttle people to warming centers. Amanda's students working together to solve physics problems by candlelight when the power failed. This requires higher analysis, Ixel transmitted to their homeworld. Humans consistently operate against optimal self-interest, yet achieve results that our models indicate should be impossible. As dawn approached, Mike finally stumbled into the break room, having saved 6 lives during his extended shift. Instead of resting, he was filling out detailed patient reports. "Thompson, go home," his supervisor ordered. "Just one more," he yawned, reaching for his coffee. "Need to make sure the next shift has all the info they need." In Amanda's apartment, her students had finally fallen asleep, textbooks still open on their laps. She sat grading papers by flashlight, keeping watch over her impromptu family. Preliminary conclusion, Ixel recorded. Human inefficiency appears to create unexpected advantages. Their insistence on maintaining social bonds and emotional connections, while energetically costly, produces cooperative behaviors that exceed the sum of individual capabilities. Most troubling, they seem to derive satisfaction from behaviors our species abandoned as evolutionarily disadvantageous. Query, Venn added to the report. Could our species' perfect logic be imperfect after all? Dr. Jack Reynolds stared at the data scrolling across his monitor at the National Physics Laboratory, his coffee going cold beside him. The readings couldn't be right. He ran the calculations again, his hands trembling slightly. "Son of a gun," he whispered, reaching for his phone. "Get me the director, now." The Zarkak's observation team had detected the quantum anomaly hours before Earth's scientists, their advanced sensors picking up the first ripples in the planet's magnetic field. They watched with clinical interest as humanity faced what their calculations showed to be certain doom. Humans remain unaware that the anomaly will render their planet uninhabitable within 47 planetary rotations, Ixel noted, monitoring Dr. Reynolds' lab. Their primitive detection systems err. "Holy hell, would you look at these readings?" Reynolds shouted, interrupting their observation as more scientists crowded around his terminal. "The magnetic field is destabilizing at a quantum level. If this continues..." "Their understanding exceeds expectations," Venn commented, adjusting their sensors. Within hours, an emergency conference had been assembled. The Zarkaks observed as Reynolds, still wearing his MIT hoodie and looking like he hadn't slept in days, addressed a room full of the world's top scientists. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We're looking at a complete collapse of Earth's magnetic field. Without it, we lose our protection from solar radiation, our electronic infrastructure, possibly even our atmosphere." The room erupted in chaos. Reynolds waited a moment, then whistled sharply. "Now that the panic's out of the way," he continued with a grim smile, "let's solve this thing. I've already got some ideas, and they're just crazy enough to work." "Subject displays inappropriate levity given situation severity," Ixel noted. "Yet observe how it affects the group dynamic." The panic in the room had indeed transformed into determined energy. Reynolds started sketching on a whiteboard, his military training showing in how he took command of the situation. "We need 3 teams," he announced. "Team Alpha works on understanding the anomaly. Beta, you're on developing countermeasures. Gamma, you handle infrastructure protection. And yes, I'm aware our chances are microscopic. Anyone who wants to leave can do so now." The Zarkaks recorded that not a single human left the room. "The math says we got a 0.01% chance of success," Reynolds concluded. Then he grinned. "But you know what? Han Solo faced worse odds. Let's make history, people." "Reference not understood," Venn transmitted. "Accessing Earth Cultural Database." "Ah, most illogical comparison." As the teams dispersed, Reynolds pulled aside Dr. Lisa Martinez, a quantum physicist who'd been scribbling furiously throughout his presentation. "You've got that look, Lisa," he said. "The one that says either you've solved it or you're about to blow up the lab again." "What if we could create a quantum resonance field?" she responded, shoving her notes at him. "It's completely theoretical, probably impossible, and might accidentally create a small black hole. But..." "Perfect," Reynolds interrupted, already reading. "That's exactly the kind of impossible we need right now." The Zarkaks observed as the humans worked through the night, their behavior patterns becoming increasingly fascinating. They documented how productivity actually increased with stress levels, how moments of humor punctuated intense work sessions, and how the humans seemed to draw strength from each other's presence. "They are attempting to violate multiple laws of quantum physics," Ixel noted with what might have been amazement. "Their calculations are crude, yet innovative." "Should we intervene?" Venn queried. "Our directive allows for prevention of species extinction." "Negative," Ixel responded after a pause. "Continue observation. These humans, they are teaching us something new about the nature of possibility itself." As dawn broke over the lab, Reynolds looked up at his team, all still working despite exhaustion. "Mission Control, we got a plan," he announced into a secure video call. "It's absolutely insane, probably suicidal, and our only shot at saving the planet. Who's in?" The Zarkax watched in continued bewilderment as hands rose across the globe, humanity preparing to attempt the impossible. The first blackout hit New York at 3:47 a.m. By dawn, half the eastern seaboard was dark. The Zarkax watched as their predictions began to materialize. Earth's weakening magnetic field was wreaking havoc on electrical systems worldwide. In his basement in rural Maine, retired radio operator Bill Davidson looked at his ancient ham radio equipment and smiled for the first time since his wife's passing last spring. "Been waiting for a moment like this, haven't you, old girl?" He patted the dusty transmitter. The Zarkax observed as his gnarled fingers, stiff with arthritis, began methodically checking connections and replacing tubes. Subject's actions are inefficient, then noted. Modern communication systems are failing. Primitive radio technology cannot possibly. CQ, this is W1ADA. Emergency broadcast. All operators please respond. Davidson's voice crackled across frequencies that still worked in the magnetic chaos. Within minutes, responses began flooding in. W2BB responding from Buffalo. Key D0RC here in Denver. V3XX reporting from Toronto. Remarkable. IXL transmitted. They are creating an emergency communication network using obsolete technology. Meanwhile, in a small garage in Texas, mechanic Rusty Martinez was cursing at a generator that kept shorting out. The magnetic disturbance was frying everything electronic, but he'd noticed something peculiar about his older equipment. "Hey, Mickey," he called to his apprentice. "Bring me that pre-1980 alternator, the one without computerized parts." The Zarkax watched as Martinez worked through the night, discovering that older, purely mechanical systems were more resistant to the magnetic interference. By morning, he'd modified 3 generators to work in the new conditions. "It ain't pretty," he explained to the growing crowd outside his garage, "but it'll keep your fridges running and your phones charged. Here's how to build one yourself." He began teaching everyone who showed up, refusing payment. When someone asked why, he shrugged. "My mama didn't raise no profiteer. Besides, we're all in this mess together." The aliens observed as similar scenes unfolded globally. Davidson's radio network expanded hourly, connecting isolated communities. Martinez's generator design spread through word of mouth, then through Davidson's ham radio operators, reaching communities worldwide. Their response continues to defy logic. IXL noted. Instead of hoarding resources, they freely share information. Instead of seeking individual survival, they strengthen group cohesion. In Chicago, they watched Amanda Harrison's physics students using their blackout study session knowledge to help explain the crisis to younger children. In Oklahoma, Dr. Miller's storm-chasing team repurposed their equipment to measure magnetic fluctuations, feeding data to Reynolds' team. "Look at these patterns," one of Harrison's students said, drawing in the dirt for a group of scared kids. "It's like a big magnetic storm. And what do we do during storms?" "We help each other," a small voice answered. "That's right. We help each other." The Zarkax continued monitoring as the crisis deepened. Power grids failed worldwide, but communities adapted with remarkable speed. Streets filled with people sharing information, resources, and support. When standard communication methods failed, humans simply created new ones. "They are singing," Venn observed with confusion, detecting harmonics from multiple population centers. Indeed, as night fell over powerless cities, people gathered in streets and parks, sharing songs and stories. The darkness that should have brought panic instead brought communities closer together. Davidson's voice crackled over the radio network he helped build. Message from Dr. Reynolds' team. They need volunteers with electronics expertise. Multiple locations. Who's in? The responses came immediately, from all over the world. Their civilization is failing, IXL transmitted to the homeworld, yet they display increasing organization and cohesion. Previous models indicate this should be impossible. Query. Venn added. Should we update our understanding of what constitutes civilization? As another dawn approached, the aliens watched humanity face what should have been a breaking point. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. A species growing stronger precisely because everything was falling apart. NASA Director Colonel Emily Brooks stood in the dim emergency lighting of Mission Control, studying the latest data from Dr. Reynolds' team. The backup generators hummed, providing just enough power to keep their essential systems running. The Zarkak's observation team had finally decided to break protocol, materializing in the control room with their dire warning. Colonel Brooks, Ixil addressed her, their crystalline form casting prismatic patterns on the walls. We have been observing your species. Our calculations indicate survival is mathematically impossible. The quantum anomaly will. Let me stop you right there, Brooks interrupted, not even blinking at their alien appearance. Did you come here to help, or just to tell us we're doomed? The alien's crystalline structure flickered in what might have been confusion. We came to provide accurate data regarding your species' extinction probability. Brooks laughed, the sound echoing through the tense control room. Well, then you clearly don't understand humanity. Jenkins, get our visitors some coffee. They're about to watch us rewrite probability. Your response is illogical, Venn observed. We have calculated. Oh, honey, Brooks grinned. Humanity's greatest achievements have always been illogical. You think the Wright brothers had good odds? Or the Apollo missions? We've been defying calculations since we crawled out of the caves. Across town, an impromptu end-of-the-world party had broken out in a physics lab. Dr. Reynolds' team had been working for 72 hours straight when someone started playing music through a battery-powered speaker. Are they celebrating their doom? Ixil asked, genuinely puzzled. Nah, Reynolds replied, sketching equations on a whiteboard while dancing. We're celebrating because I just figured out how to create a quantum resonance field using modified satellite arrays. Lisa, check my math while I do the robot. The Zarkaks watched in bewilderment as the exhausted scientists combined complex quantum mechanics with what appeared to be a dance competition. Somehow, the absurd combination was producing results. Your species continues to confound us, Ixil admitted to Brooks. We have observed similar crises on 12 other worlds. All chose logical responses. All failed. That's because they probably didn't have this, Brooks replied, pointing to a screen showing social media feeds. Despite the crumbling infrastructure, humans were sharing memes about the crisis, making jokes about the end of the world, and organizing help through hashtags. #Apocalypsolator is trending. A young technician reported. People are sharing survival tips through TikTok dances. Ingenious way to ensure information spreads, Brooks nodded. People remember things better when they laugh. The Zarkaks observed as humans worldwide turned what should have been a descent into chaos into something entirely different. Underground bunker tours became viral videos. Emergency preparedness guides were shared as rap battles. A group of kindergartners had somehow gotten their drawings of brave scientist friends delivered to Reynolds' team. These arrived for you. Brooks handed Ixil a crayon drawing of what appeared to be a crystal alien surrounded by hearts. The kids at local elementary heard we had visitors. They want you to know Earth welcomes you with hugs. For the first time in their species' history, Zarkaks felt something that might have been emotion. Your species faces extinction, Venn stated, though with less certainty than before. Yet you create art. You dance. You welcome strangers. You defy every survival protocol we know. That's because survival isn't enough for us, Brooks replied, pinning the children's drawings to a bulletin board. We don't just want to exist. We want to live. And that means keeping our humanity, especially when things look impossible. As if to emphasize her point, cheers erupted from the lab next door. Reynolds' team had made another breakthrough, this one apparently inspired by a joke about quantum cats told during their impromptu dance party. Watch us, Brooks told the aliens, her eyes twinkling. We're about to show you why impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet. The Zarkax watched, their certainty and mathematical probability wavering for the first time in their species' history, as humanity continued to laugh in the face of extinction. The moment Silicon Valley engineers started sharing proprietary technology with their competitors, the Zarkax knew something fundamental had shifted in their understanding of humanity. TechCorp is releasing their quantum processing patents, a breathless intern reported to Dr. Reynolds. And Global Tech just opened their entire AI database to the public. Sir, companies worth trillions are giving away their most valuable secrets. Reynolds barely looked up from his equations. Nothing like the end of the world to remind people what really matters. Speaking of which, get me the prison warden on the line. The Zarkax observed with increasing fascination as Reynolds spoke with the warden of San Quentin State Prison. Within hours, a team of guards arrived at the lab escorting James Chen, a former quantum physicist serving time for corporate espionage. Your calculations indicated this human was dangerous, Ven transmitted to Ixel. Yet they release him during a crisis. Chen walked into the lab, blinking in the emergency lighting. Dr. Reynolds, never thought I'd see you again after you testify at my trial. Yeah, well, the world's ending. Seems like a good time to let bygones be bygones. Reynolds extended his hand. Besides, your paper on quantum field manipulation was brilliant, even if you did steal it. Want to help us save the world? The Zarkax watched as Chen's eyes filled with tears. Within minutes, he was at a whiteboard, his insights providing crucial missing pieces to their theoretical framework. Across the globe, similar scenes unfolded. Former rivals collaborated, past grievances forgotten in the face of extinction. A viral video showed competing restaurant chains combining their resources to feed emergency workers. Oil companies repurposed their drilling equipment to help install magnetic field sensors. Their social structures are reorganizing spontaneously, Ixel noted. Previous barriers dissolve without formal instruction. In a particularly compelling moment, they observed a group of kindergartners sending hand-drawn pictures to the scientists. One reached Reynolds' desk, a crayon drawing of stick figures holding hands around the earth, with wobbly letters spelling out, "Please save our planet. We believe in you." Getting these every hour, Reynolds said, carefully pinning it to his board. Kids worldwide are making them. The teachers say it helps them feel less scared, gives them something to do. He smiled. Plus, can't let down our youngest supporters, right? The Zarkax were particularly puzzled by humanity's continued emphasis on emotional connections, even as their situation grew dire. They observed families hosting apocalypse dinner parties over battery-powered radios, scientists taking breaks to call their loved ones, and communities organizing stargazing gatherings, while we still have dark skies. Their focus on emotional bonds appears to enhance rather than hinder problem-solving capabilities. Then transmitted. Most unexpected. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. During a global video conference running on the last functioning satellites, a 10-year-old girl asked a question during the public comment section. If the Earth's magnetic field is like a big magnet, why can't we just make a bigger magnet? Reynolds' team fell silent. Chen dropped his marker. Holy shit, Reynolds whispered. She's right. We've been thinking too complicated. Lisa, what if we repurposed the particle accelerators, generated a planetary-scale magnetic pulse? The room erupted in activity. The Zarkax watched as humanity's finest minds built upon an elementary school student's simple question, spinning it into a possible salvation. Their solution derives from a juvenile's incomplete understanding, Ixel noted with something approaching wonder. Yet it may function. How do they achieve such results from chaos? As if in answer, another group of children's drawings arrived. This time, they showed the Earth surrounded by a rainbow-colored magnetic field, with scientists wearing superhero capes. Because we dream, Colonel Brooks answered, having overheard their transmission. We imagine 6 impossible things before breakfast, and then we figure out how to make them possible. That's the human factor your calculations can't quantify. The Zarkax watched as humanity continued to defy their every prediction, turning what should have been their final hours into a testament to the power of collective hope and determination. Dr. Reynolds stared at the holographic display, its blue light casting shadows across the exhausted faces of his team. Their plan to generate a planetary-scale magnetic pulse was ready, but there was a catch, a devastating one. "The equipment has to be manually calibrated," he announced to the silent room. "In the magnetic dead zones, whoever goes in, the radiation levels." He couldn't finish the sentence. "A suicide mission," Colonel Brooks concluded quietly. The Zarkax observers shifted their crystalline forms, their calculations confirming the lethal nature of the task. "Your species has reached the logical conclusion," Ixel stated. "No rational being will." "I'll do it." The voice came from the back of the room. Tony Martinez, Rusty's father, stepped forward. The aging electrician had been helping with the equipment modifications, his terminal cancer diagnosis known to few. "Mr. Martinez," Reynolds began, "you don't." "Save it, Doc," Tony interrupted, a slight smile playing on his weathered face. "Stage 4 cancer's already got my number. Might as well make these last few months count for something." The Zarkax observed in silence as Rusty burst into the room, having overheard everything. "Dad, no," he protested. "We can find another way." "Son," Tony placed his hands on Rusty's shoulders, "you've already given me more pride than any father deserves. Let me do this. Let me make sure you and everyone else has a future to build those crazy generators of yours in." Observing unprecedented behavioral pattern, Venn transmitted. Subject choosing certain death for uncertain collective benefit. But what happened next astounded the aliens even more. As word of the mission spread, volunteers began pouring in. Veterans, terminal patients, elderly engineers. Hundreds stepped forward, willing to sacrifice their remaining time for a chance to save humanity. "We need 6 points of calibration," Reynolds explained to the assembled volunteers. 6 teams. "The radiation, it'll be quick, but it won't be pleasant." "Better than letting the whole world go dark," replied Sarah Chen, an elderly quantum physicist who had come out of retirement. "Besides, I've lived a good life. These kids deserve their chance." The Zarkax watched as Tony led the volunteer teams through their training. Despite the gravity of their situation, the humans maintained their peculiar habit of mixing humor with crisis. "Hey, Doc," Tony called out during a practice run. "If this works, name something after me. Maybe one of those quantum thingamajigs. The Martinez particle has a nice ring to it." "The Martinez miracle," Reynolds corrected, his voice thick with emotion. "Because that's what you all are." As the teams prepared for deployment, the aliens observed something they had never seen in any species facing extinction. Hope, not just for survival, but for something greater than themselves. "They sing," Ixel noted, as the volunteers joined in an old battle hymn. "They joke. They comfort each other's families. Even now, they maintain these connections." The moment of truth arrived all too soon. 6 teams, 6 points around the globe, 6 groups of heroes saying their final goodbyes. "Dad," Rusty called out as Tony prepared to board the transport. I love you." "Love you too, son," Tony replied, his voice steady. "Keep building. Keep helping. And when this is all over, have a cold beer for your old man." The Zarkax observed as humanity faced its darkest hour not with despair, but with dignity, courage, and an unshakable determination to ensure others would see the dawn. Final observation. Ixel transmitted, watching the transport vehicles depart. "We came to document the end of a primitive species. Instead, we are witnessing something our algorithms cannot compute, the power of choosing others over self, of finding strength in sacrifice, of turning certain defeat into possible victory through sheer force of will." Query. Venn added, their crystalline form vibrating with what might have been emotion. "Is this, perhaps, what it truly means to be advanced?" The answer would come soon enough, as 6 teams of heroes ventured into the darkness, carrying humanity's hopes with them. 3 months after what humanity would come to call the Martinez Miracle, the Zarkax materialized in Colonel Brooks's backyard. They found her tending to a memorial garden, 6 different species of flowers blooming in honor of the 6 teams that had saved Earth. "Your timing's good," she said without looking up. "The barbecue starts in an hour. Dr. Reynolds and the others are coming." "We have come to present our species' formal assessment," Ixel began, their crystalline form catching the sunlight. "And I'm inviting you to a barbecue," Brooks interrupted, finally turning to face them. "Because that's what humans do after saving the world. We gather, we remember, and we celebrate life." The Zarkax observed as her backyard gradually filled with people. Dr. Reynolds arrived with his team. Lisa Martinez brought her father's favorite beer, and Bill Davidson set up an old radio to communicate with celebration gatherings worldwide. Children ran around, wearing homemade Martinez Miracle t-shirts decorated with crayon drawings of heroes. "Your species continues to puzzle us," Ven admitted, watching Rusty Martinez teach a group of kids how to build miniature generators. "You succeeded not despite your emotional attachments, but because of them. Finally figuring that out, huh?" Reynolds grinned, flipping burgers on the grill. "You know, we found Tony's last notes. Even in those final moments, he was cracking jokes, sending love to his family. That kind of spirit. You can't calculate its power." The aliens watched as humans shared stories, tears, and laughter. Someone had brought the children's drawings from the crisis, now carefully preserved in albums. The kindergartners who'd drawn them were there too, proudly showing the Zarkax their new pictures of crystal aliens having a barbecue. "We must confess something," Ixel said to Brooks. "Our mission was not merely observation. We came believing we would document the fall of a primitive species, validating our own evolution away from emotion and attachment. And instead," Brooks prompted, handing them each a plate of food they couldn't eat but accepted out of newfound appreciation for human customs. "Instead, we learned that our perfect logic was perfectly wrong," Ven responded. "Your species' greatest strength is what we abandoned. The ability to hope, to love, to sacrifice, to find joy even in darkness." As if to emphasize their point, someone started playing music. Soon the backyard was full of dancing scientists, engineers, and families of the heroes who'd given everything to save them. The Zarkax watched as Rusty raised a toast to his father, his tears of grief mixing with genuine laughter at shared memories. "We have a request," Ixel announced formally. "Our species wishes to learn from yours. Not your technology or your sciences, but your humanity." Brooks smiled. "Well, you're already at a barbecue. That's Humanity 101 right there. Lesson 1. Sometimes the most important calculations are made with the heart." As the sun set, the Zarkax experienced something unprecedented, their first purely emotional response. Watching humans celebrate life in a garden honoring sacrifice, seeing strength in their vulnerability and wisdom in their apparent chaos, the aliens felt a sensation their logical minds couldn't quantify. "We believe," Ven transmitted to their homeworld, "we are experiencing what humans call joy." "Welcome to the family," Brooks said, somehow knowing what had just happened. "Now, who wants to learn how to make s'mores?" Under the stars they'd helped save, humanity's celebration continued. The Zarkax, those perfect logical beings, found themselves drawn into songs they couldn't sing, dances they couldn't dance, and emotions they were only beginning to understand. Final observation. Ixel recorded, watching a child offer them a slightly sticky crayon drawing. "The most advanced civilization we have ever encountered is also the one that never forgot how to feel, how to hope, how to love. Perhaps in the end, that is the most logical evolution of all." And somewhere, they knew, Tony Martinez was smiling.